Black Panther and Shuri. In the Homecoming Chapter 1, T'Challa the Black Panther found that the timing of the Jabari clan's military push for independence from Wakanda was peculiar because they knew he possessed a cosmic god called the Jade Tiger and that Wakanda's military was recently upgraded. Were the Jabari considering a guerrilla war and hiding in the caves of the northern mountains, knowing that he would not send airstrikes from the Nyami battle cruisers or the war satellites on his own people? Surely they would not contest the Crystal Forest as it was open ground, but they could contaminate it and make the place hard for T'Challa to use as a base in enemy territory. Probably that was the reason for the surge of mystical energy in that region. The Jabari's Death Tiger kill unit could sabotage T'Challa's forces undetected and prolong the war until he gave up in frustration. But why take such action now? This could have been done years ago when he became king of Wakanda. T'Challa smelt Damilah, and that same moment Commander Okoye gripped T'Challa's arm, then subtly pointed out the man in the crowded Babagor shrine. What was he doing here? It must be for the Hanuman staff due to its ability to defeat the Death Tigers, thought T'Challa. But why come now for it? The staff was in the shrine for centuries and this was known to the Death Tigers. T'Challa had not seen Damilah in over a decade and the young woman who accompanied him was unfamiliar, but her resemblance to Damilah was unmistakable. The two exiled Death Tigers came through the congregation of Habish aka Sidis people. "Is this your daughter?" asked T'Challa. "I am," responded Asura. "And what is your name?" asked Okoye of the daughter. The young woman revealed it and Okoye remarked, "Divine justice is the meaning of your name in the Jabari tongue, is it not?" Asura said nothing. "I assume that both of you are finally coming back to Wakanda with the rest of the Death Tigers," said T'Challa. "Jabari land is our home, not Wakanda," said Damilah. "Where is your wife?" asked Okoye. "She died on a suicide mission that was ordered by King T'Chaka," replied Damilah. "I am sorry," said T'Challa. "For what?" "She died in the service of a great man." "T'Chaka knew the value of the Death Tigers, but you spat in our faces," said Damilah. "You can't speak to T'Challa in such a tone, apologize now," said Okoye. "When he eventually turns on you like he did to us, will you still be as loyal as you are now?" asked Damilah. Okoye's response was interrupted when the midnight devotion ceremony started the prayers. The Sidis people were descendants of Africans who came to India thousands of years ago. The present generation made their fortune from trading foreign currencies and online consultancy, but they still upheld the ceremonies that honored their ancestors. The Wakanda interlopers disguised their battle uniforms with nano-robots-infused attires. T'Challa activated the invisibility mode of his ceremonial battle suit. He teleported into the hidden chamber beneath the shrine. Suddenly he felt that he was not alone. He turned around and Asura waved at him. "Where is your father?" should be the next question, said Asura in a voice that mimicked T'Challa's. "You were programmed to hate me," said T'Challa. "You are not a likable person," said Asura in an American accent. Something moved in the chamber's darkness. It was a lemur monkey and it scampered into a hole in the wall. T'Challa's acute senses detected that the hole was a gateway to another dimension and that place probably held the staff of Hanuman. Asura ran on the ceiling and dived into the gateway. T'Challa followed and he emerged on a flat hilltop. The computerized staff was planted in the center of the hilltop. The weapon puzzled the Black Panther because the staff was supposed to be thousands of years old and not so futuristic looking. 10 scenarios came to mind, from time travel to aliens, as for the reason behind the staff's appearance. Asura froze the staff with ice generated from her hands. T'Challa anticipated her intention to destroy the staff, so he leapt at her. Asura pointed a finger at T'Challa and he was encapsulated in ice. She unfroze the staff and walked over to T'Challa. "The Death Tigers planted in the minds of the Black Panther kings the myth that the staff of Hanuman could harm us," said Asura. "The day was anticipated when we would have to put down a rogue Black Panther like you. You are trapped and now it is safe for me to return home. T'Challa activated the bioelectrical discharge in his suit that he had developed ever since he fought the ice god Ymir with the Avengers 10 years ago. Asura was probably 17 at that time, so she would not know all that he had encountered, but she noticed that the ice slowly melted. The ice was never meant to hold you. That job is for this, said Asura as she turned on the staff and it absorbed T'Challa. Chapter 2. You can either return to Wakanda in chains or as a free man. It is up to you, said Okoye. Damilah was about to say something, but Asura returned to his side and smirked. Looks like I am returning home a free man, said Damilah, and then he vanished with Asura. Okoye used her Kimoyo to scan for T'Challa's signal but got nothing. Then she called the commando division in Wakanda and called for a deep scan of the airspace over the city's territory. Shoot down anything that is cloaked and moving, said Okoye. Done, said the officer on the other end, and he sent the location of the downed craft. Okoye rushed out of the shrine and was able to discreetly turn on her Midnight Angel war armor, which gave her the ability of flight. The Death Tiger's aircraft had crashed into a wetland and Okoye landed on it. Damilah and Asura came out. You actually left T'Challa. I am impressed, said Asura. I doubt that he will meet his end to the likes of you, said Okoye. She ordered another strike from the Wakandan war satellite and she flew away from the aircraft. Damilah grabbed his daughter and ran just before the ship exploded. Okoye spotted them on the other side of the wetland. She went and hovered over them. That was a dumb move because you lost valuable intel that was on the ship, said Asura. I shot you down with a satellite. Whatever intel that you may have is inconsequential to the fact that you are going to lose, said Okoye. Asura pointed at Okoye, but Damilah held down her hand. I will take care of her. You have done enough today with T'Challa, he said. Okoye lost sight of him until he was right next to her and he swung a sword against the side of her armor. She turned and he sent a sharp knee into her gut. She crashed on the bank of the marsh and brought out her mechanized spear. But Damilah was already above her and slashed the sword on her helmet. Okoye fought back, but she missed with every thrust and spin of the spear. Damilah high-kicked her on the chin and that subdued her. The Death Tigers will not lose. Tell that to Shuri and the others. We bring death to them, said Damilah while he stood next to her. Okoye pulled a grenade bead from her wrist and detonated it. The explosion killed Damilah and shredded her armor. There was only ash where Damilah once stood. Asura knelt and buried her hands in it. Okoye was prostrate and she tried to reach for another grenade but without success. I will honor the fact it was defeat through combat, so when you recuperate then we will fight, said Asura as she wiped her eyes. You will know divine justice after I cut you down. I look forward to it, said Okoye and blanked out. Chapter 3. Asura placed a portion of the ashes in her pocket. Her father's mortality seemed unreal and her fingers trembled slightly while picking up the ashes. The astral projection of Ngoma caught her off guard. My queen-to-be, said the Jabari mystic. My condolences. I sensed the death of the next in line to the Jabari throne. I am no queen, said Asura. As per tradition, Damilah was to be made king of the Jabari if M'Baku was killed or absent. Now that Damilah is no more, then authority rolls over to you if the opportunity arises, said Ngoma. Can you bring him back? I am sorry, but I cannot, and he would not want it to be so, replied Ngoma. Hurry home to the Jabari. We are close to the independence that your father gave his life for. Chapter 4. T'Challa employed the cosmic jade tiger to rip through the membranes that separated the 9 pocket dimensions that were intended to trap him. Eventually he returned to the Babagor shrine after he slipped through the tear made by giant god's claws, placing the being in an amulet during the process. He received the commando division's alert on Okoye's condition and he teleported to the location that was given. I need a medical unit on standby for my arrival, said T'Challa. He lifted up Okoye and went to Wakanda. He observed the satellite footage of Okoye's fight on his Kimoyo while the doctors stabilized her. He regretted that the uprising had accounted for its first fatality, but he was glad that it was not Okoye. He was not surprised that Asura held back because the Death Tigers had an honor code. There was a private alert on the Kimoyo which showed that someone was at his residence. He went home and found that Nakia had made use of the access that he had given her as a gesture to the stage of the relationship that they were exploring. "Hi," said Nakia. "Hi yourself," he said and kissed her. "The news feeds are concerned about a supposed disturbance in the Jabari lands," said Nakia. "How did they find out?" he asked coyly as he kissed from her ear down to her neck. "They have sources." "Professional spies like you?" asked T'Challa. She caught his lips with her own and he tantalized her again. He sat on a chair and she straddled him. "Talk to me now. What is on your mind that you want to distract yourself with me?" asked Nakia. "I was called a rogue Black Panther today by an enemy combatant," replied T'Challa. "And you don't see things that way?" "No, then how do you see yourself?" "As better than my predecessors." "As it should be, because every generation must seek to outdo the previous. I am sure your parents hoped for the same with you." "There is no shame in thinking that you are better," said Nakia. "And I am tired of the Jabari nonsense that keeps repeating," said T'Challa. "As I recall, you made the last Jabari king the regent when you were away in America as a school teacher and an avenger. Things were okay back then. What changed?" "All the nation heard was that there was a closed-doors fallout," said Nakia. "The Jabari did not like that I brought the Avengers to Wakanda, which was by accident since we fought an ice god and ended up here," said T'Challa. "Then the Jabari took the slant that the country was modernizing socially but by foreign influences. It went downhill from there." Nakia hugged him. "Also Okoye was hospitalized," said T'Challa and told her the story. "I need to visit her right away," said Nakia. "Okay. In the meantime I am going to the Crystal Forest." "Be safe," said Nakia. "Likewise," said T'Challa and gave her a parting kiss. T'Challa met his sister Shuri on the edge of the Crystal Forest. She was also disheartened when she got the news of Okoye. "Asura is the name of the woman and she can generate sub-zero conditions in an instant," said T'Challa. "She can mourn her dead in a prison cell for all I care," said Shuri. "I am going into the forest." She spun the spear of Bashan-Ga that she carried, then she disappeared and left a wake of blue-speed friction lightning. In a flash she reappeared, but someone was on her shoulder. "Spider-Man," said T'Challa. Peter Parker aka Spider-Man was in a deep sleep and his presence confirmed T'Challa's fears that the Crystal Forest was pivotal in the Jabari's strategy. "Only wildlife is in the forest and I found him in alone on a spider totem. The Death Tigers must have brought him when they came over from America," said Shuri. The word totem triggered the memory of a file that T'Challa had on Spider-Man that stated that he was hunted by life force absorbers from an alternate world, and these hunters fed on beings associated with the spirits of animals, much like how T'Challa was associated with the Black Panther and the Jade Tiger. "The Jabari wouldn't," muttered T'Challa. He sensed a new presence in the Crystal Forest just as the Wakanda military reported a massive teleportation jump in the region. "T'Challa, we have incoming," said Shuri. A bearded man melted the trees as he ran out of the Crystal Forest. "His name is Solus and he is the Jabari's counter for my cosmic Jade Tiger," said T'Challa. "He is not alone," said Shuri and pointed to a younger man who resembled the first. "That is Morlun. The Jabari used Spider-Man as a beacon to summon them here to take on both of us," said T'Challa. "Let us give them the Wakanda reception," said Shuri. Also remind me that I have something to speak to you about when we are finished. T'Challa took Spider-Man's wrist and removed the artificial web slinger. He broke it to allow the fluid to run onto the flat blade of his energy dagger. The imposing Solus reached T'Challa and grabbed his arm. T'Challa expertly guided the energy dagger into the point of contact and the web fluid mutated at the intersection of the doorways to T'Challa and Solus' life forces. "What have you done?" asked Solus. "Basic biology. I am a cell and so are you. Anything that wants to enter or leave a cell must signal the gatekeepers of the cell. I just clogged up our gatekeepers for the moment. Which gives enough time to allow the vibranium isotopes in my dagger to weaken your hand," replied T'Challa, and with a martial arts move he used Solus' momentum to flip him onto his back. Shuri used the point-blank force of her enhanced speed to decapitate Solus with her spear and the head spun up in the air. An emotional Morlun ran past T'Challa who aptly avoided a collision. Shuri swung around and punched Morlun's face with her metallic fist. T'Challa followed up with a precise knee to the center of Morlun's forehead. A disoriented Morlun offered no resistance when Shuri cleaved him in two as she ran the spear down the middle of his body. T'Challa pivoted 180 degrees, he produced a clawed energy gauntlet on his right hand and he caught Solus' head inches before it hit the ground. Then he crushed the skull in his hand. Chapter 5 Welcome back home, said M'Baku the Jabari king to his cousin Issara. I heard about your father's sacrifice. He died honorably and in so doing took away a vital commander from our enemy's ranks, said Issara. Damila's name will be honored every year when the war for independence is over, said M'Baku. Thank you, said Issara. I have placed the other death tigers in strategic places in the mountains, said M'Baku. I trust that Ngoma outlined to you the way in which your mutancy will be harnessed. He did, and to paraphrase, he wants me to make Mount Kilimanjaro jealous of the snow that I will create, said Issara. M'Baku led her out of the gorilla head-shaped opening of the throne room to view the landscape that was below the mountain. There were flashes of light in the distant crystal forest. What is happening there? Asked Issara. An opening salvo to soften up the enemy and make them overconfident, replied M'Baku. You are the real power in our arsenal. What if the enemy brings his ex-wife Storm to combat me? I have contingencies for that scenario. Everything was meticulously planned for this day, replied M'Baku. Now cousin, make them remember why the Jabari name scared them as children in the night. Next story, A Panther in Winter.